Here's a question for you. Can you ever imagine going up to the stage in your high school diploma and all of a sudden you get dress coded for shoes? We talked about a similar situation last season, 1 or 2 years ago, where someone was denied the diploma because of the Mexican flag. But now it's a very similar situation. One of the graduates is being dress coded for the shoes. But there's a twist to the story, as you'll see in this. As you'll see, take a look.
It was diploma pickup day here at Tate High School. Now, some of the students that I spoke with as they were coming out say that what happened to some students on graduation day simply was not fair. Parents say dress code violations prevented more than 30 kids from walking the stage for Tate High School's graduation. Some parents who commented on our Facebook page say their kids were turned away for wearing t-shirts and what was deemed improper footwear like sandals. Dana Sullivan's child was also turned away. Her son Nashawn Brown was a star athlete for Tate's football team. Sullivan says he was ranked number 1 in Pensacola and 15th across the state for tackles. He was turned away for wearing a t-shirt and tennis shoes.
He was upset too. Obviously, we tried to focus on the positive. You're still graduating, but you're not able to walk with your friends. So he was discouraged a little bit, and but like I said, we just tried to uplift him and not focus on the negative that they brought about on this what's supposed to be a wonderful day.
It's unfortunate, but it's something I don't think is too rigorous of a request. It's a very dignified occasion, and we just went through 8 graduations, and those that I saw come across the stage seem to be adhering to the request of their individual schools.
Montgomery says she spoke with the principal, Laura Touchstone, who said her staff made a mistake in turning away her child. Students I spoke with say what happened was not right, and the dress code should be the least of the school's problems on graduation day. Brent Carney, WEAR News.
Okay. Common sense alert. The dress code requirements for your child's graduation is as follows: button-down shirt, pants, closed-toed shoes, nice shoes, no flip-flops, no sandals, no slippers, no pajama bottoms, no shorts, no t-shirts, none of that. It's like you're going to prom. The whole reasoning for this is professionalism. And so what happened now? Well, the staff member said they made a mistake. But when you make a mistake, like I said before, like the old saying, if you make a mistake, you got to own up to it and apologize and say, hey, you're sorry. That's what a staff member did. And I don't know what to say here. All right. When I was in graduation, I had to wear nice clothing, button-down shirt, pants, shoes. That's the dress code requirement. If I wore sandals, then I wouldn't be walking up on the stage. Y'all may think this is harsh, not a big deal. This is a very big deal. In fact, throughout the 6 years, we focused on a bunch of dress code to where the kids were right, the schools were at the wrong, and the kids were at the right. Now it's the schools at the right and the kids at the wrong. I changed up my antics to say that the whole reason why schools put into dress codes is to prevent distraction in the educational process. That's why something like this is not allowed. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Because it's a distraction to the educational process or environment. It's like this, hats down low. No one can see your face. Hats on backward, sideways. Another reason is you can hide drugs in there. That's why hoods are not allowed, because you can hide drugs in there. And it's all because of the increased violence that are happening in schools where people just lay their hats down low and no one can see who they are, so-and-so. And security reasons. And traditionally, hats are not one public place, so if you're in a courthouse, you are asked to remove your hat out of respect. And when you're at a funeral, you're not allowed, you can't wear your hat at a funeral, so you have to take it out to show respect. So whenever you hear somebody say hats off in a building, you take your hat off. That's being disobedient and being very insubordinate. It's part of insubordination. And like I talked about when I did my insubordination video, insubordination means a failure to comply with the reasonable request. How do you be subordinate? Like we talked about. Follow directions, follow the rules, and know that you're responsible for your own actions. Still ahead, parents are in court for starving a 10-year-old child. We talked about this earlier this year. Now the parents are back in court. But next, this superintendent is postponing graduation because of the number of because we have an attendance rule. We'll hear from the superintendent and hear his side, what he has to say. Stay with us. Could you ever imagine postponing graduation because people are deemed eligible? That's what one superintendent is doing in Texas as he's postponing this. Now, this was from 5 days ago, and I'll just let you watch it. Take a look.
Is here, superintendent of the... Daryl Henson is here, superintendent of the Marlin Independent School District. We appreciate you being here, sir. Thank you very much. Help us just understand, how does this happen?
So, good evening. Throughout the year, students speak with counselors, leadership staff on where they are as it relates to the graduation status. In August, every senior, down to freshman, has a graduation plan. But you have to make sure that you attend classes every day and pass all your courses. In Texas, we have a 90% attendance rule, and you have to be in class for 90% of the time.
Okay, I mean, it all makes sense. It's sad, I guess, at some point if only 5 kids out of the whole group were able to be allowed to graduate. But I guess the standards are indeed the standards. Do you understand why parents are upset?
Oh, I definitely understand the emotions of parents, and I definitely kind of use the analogy. A school district is like a factory line from pre-K through 12th grade. Our job is to make sure that you, as a vehicle, are ready to hit the road without recall. You came to us and you have a lifetime warranty. But we understand that despite being on track, the race was not complete. We had a number of seniors not finish their attendance and or course completion throughout their 8th semester, which is the spring semester of their senior year. So we have talked to parents and worked with parents, and we felt that it was best to provide additional time, support, and resources to ensure that every student can meet the requirements outlined by the Texas Education Agency.
I get that you were in a difficult position, right? Because you've got 5 kids who, I guess, did everything right and were ready to graduate and had things planned and they deserve to graduate. How is it fair to them to delay graduation and at the same time give other people who didn't complete everything, didn't follow the rules, a chance to graduate while penalizing the 5 who played by the rules?
No, and that's one thing that I definitely understand. And tonight I am glad to announce that we have 27 students who are eligible for graduation, and we have 3 who are just waiting the final initial audit. Now, the plan was to hold a graduation ceremony for those who have finished by the last day of school on Thursday, the original date. However, it was reported inaccurately by local media that students were completing year-long courses in a number of days. So we had to take extra precaution and do additional audits just to verify that the integrity of every course was completed. The standard is the standard and the guidelines are the guidelines. And I have to ensure that every student at Marlin ISD meets the standard outlined by the state of Texas.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's hard to argue with somebody who's saying the standard's the standard and we're going to make people adhere to it, because you point out once kids have that diploma and they head out into the real world, it has to mean something. I'm interested in this because we did a story yesterday with Tate Reeves. He's the governor of Mississippi, who sort of said the same thing, because Mississippi's gone from essentially worst in the country to the envy and the model of the country for reading in elementary school because of how they changed the standards for third grade reading. It sounds like you're familiar with this. Take a listen to what the governor had to say from Mississippi.
It is about accountability. It's about raising the level of expectations. And what's happened is we have raised the level of expectations on our students, on our teachers, on our parents. And Mississippians have done what Mississippians do. They've risen up and they've met those increased expectations.
For so long, we've heard you've got to coddle kids, you have to meet them where they are, you've got to bend the standards, everybody should be, graded on a curve to what their possibilities are, on and on and on. I feel like the pendulum's shifting back, at least based on what you said and what the governor said, to the standard's the standard, and we need to make sure that kids meet that standard.
I totally agree. So let's talk about 10 years. For 10 years, Marlin ISD was rated as an academically failing school district. That was prior to my arrival. Over the past 2 years, our students, faculty, staff, and community have said high expectations are the only expectations that we will have. We are glad to announce that we went from 10 years of an F rating to an 86 rating, having some of the highest growth in the state of Texas. We actually earned an A rating for our student growth. And so we know that in Marlin ISD, our children are capable. And so it's not about trying to lower the bar or bend the curve. Life is a competition, and we have to prepare you. And we have a gold mentality. We want for every child to know, for you, silver can't be good enough. And so we have to have a championship mindset in language arts, in mathematics, in science, social studies, athletics, across the board. We have to hold you to the same standard as every student in the great state of Texas.
Dare I say, the students, even if they didn't get to graduate exactly when they thought they were, are going to be better off because of your leadership. Daryl Henson, there's a lot of kids who are going to be very thankful they had you as their superintendent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. You have a great evening.
Okay. The superintendent does make some good points. But parents are upset, and they have a right to be upset. They have a right to be upset at the school district. And I have to agree with the superintendent because of what the law says. Truancy law state from the House bill from hang on a second here. This is from House Bill 2398. I mean, the 90% rule in Texas came during those truancy laws. And part of House Bill 2398, there was a 90% rule. In Texas, they have a 90% rule. So what does it mean? In addition to Texas compulsory attendance laws, districts are required to enforce the 90% rule, which states that students in the grades kindergarten through 12 must attend a class for 90% of the time and is allowed to receive credit for a final grade. That's what the state says. So if you miss several days, that means your child's unexcused. You got unexcused absence. You can make up those unexcused absences. We're talking about truancy throughout the years. But common sense still needs to be raised for your child. I mean, a lot. I mean, when you talk about truancy in school, it's like the bar is risen up. I mean, during the pandemic, it's like, what do we do? We're going to look at that. We're going to listen to cases here when we return. In New Zealand, NZ has serious school truancy problems, government data revealed. Then we're also going to look at chronic absenteeism. But still ahead, the parents are back in court because of a starving 10-year-old child. Stay with us. About a week ago, we focused in on child abuse and child neglect. Child abuse is when you leave marks, bruises, or severe injuries to a child. Child neglect is when you prevent them from eating, or starving to death, or leaving them in a hot car. The updated case we talked about was one of the parents who were arrested for child neglect. They're in court today. Let's take a look at the hearing.
All rise. Starting County Superior Court's now in session. The Honorable Ben D. Coker presiding.
Good morning, you may be seated. Court calls the case of the state of Georgia versus Tyler Shinley and Krista Shinley, case numbers 23 FAH 0838 and 23 FAH 0839. If you have a cell phone, please silence it now. If it goes off again in my courtroom, you're subject to being held in contempt. Is the state ready?
Kate Leonard on behalf of the state, we are, Your Honor.
Mr. Shinley and Miss Shinley, are you ready to proceed? I do not see that you're represented, and I've checked the court's file, and I do not see an entry of appearance. You're on for a statutory bond hearing this morning in front of me. What are you doing, Mr. Shinley, to gain representation in this case?
I've requested a power of attorney so that I can get funds for a power of attorney. I have it ready, just have to get the funds sent to have an attorney present.
Ms. Shinley, what are you doing to gain representation in your case, ma'am?
The same thing.
Okay. Do you wish to have this case continued so that you may get representation? Given the nature of the charges, it would probably be advisable, Mr. and Ms. Shinley, to have representation. You have the absolute right to represent yourself. However, it's not always advisable to do so. I will continue this matter until June 12th at 9 a.m., at which time I expect you to have representation, and we'll go forward with this case. Any objections from the state?
No, Your Honor, we defer to the court.
Any objections from you, Mr. Shinley? Any objections from you, Ms. Shinley? All right, the case will be continued until June 12th at 9 a.m. Court will take a brief recess to allow the camera and media crews to exit court.
Now, in case you didn't tune into the child abuse case, they would charge for child neglect after. Now, this comes just right after they starved their 10-year-old boy to death. This was all in Georgia. The Griffin parents who are charged with attempting to allegedly starving and neglecting 10-year-old will be in court. They're facing charges including criminal intent to commit a felony, 2 counts attempted felonies to being molested murder and second-degree murder, false imprisonment, civil battery and battery, family violence, including your children in the first and second degree. Those are all very serious charges. And this is what we learned so far, is that the Shinleys own True West Spas in Peachtree City, McDowell, 1 in Tennessee. So we'll keep updating the case. Give me a break Sunday. After I get back from Kansas, we'll keep you posted on what's been happening. Coming up next, is there any way to combat truancy? We talked about truancy throughout the years, and there are probably some ways to combat this. NZ has a serious truancy problem, and according to the government data, we'll look at that also. And then we're going to take you to New York, where chronic absenteeism is still a major problem in New York City. How can it be done? Find out the answer when we return. Stay with us. 3 years ago, during the horrible COVID-19 pandemic, truancy has gone up in every state, and courts were being tied up to get kids getting to class. New York is one example. Tonight, government research will show what's been happening, and one school district has a solution for this. Take a look.
Jaden Bruno is now back on track at ATEC Public High School in Brooklyn, but the disruptions caused by the pandemic took its toll.
You're home, and the only type of thoughts you can have is negative thoughts, because you have family members dying, you have friends dying.
The loss of both his aunt and uncle hit hard, and Jaden admits to becoming less engaged during remote learning as he started oversleeping.
And some part of my mind knew that I was doing that on purpose a little bit, because at 10:15 my English class started. That was like my favorite class, the only class I really cared to really go to.
At one point he stopped logging on altogether, opting instead to play video games.
I feel like having the game in front of me just distracted me a lot, and it was one of the main reasons I didn't come to school a lot when it came to going online. Or if I did go to school, I just wouldn't pay attention online.
He wasn't alone. Student absenteeism across the district was only magnified by the pandemic. Principal Dr. Neil Harris says punishment was not the answer.
We had to do some reimagining of what school would look like.
The in-school suspension room was transformed into a healing center, a zen space for students and staff to decompress with counselors and social workers. And a food pantry helps address the financial hardships many of the families are experiencing. Still, in the fall, more than 40% of students did not return in person, prompting staff to call them and their families daily.
It's very easy to be very judgmental and you need to come to school and have that attitude. But it's another thing when people say, are you okay? What can we do to make sure you're okay?
We are seeing at least a doubling of chronic absence nationwide.
Hetty Chang is the executive director of national organization Attendance Works. Chronic absenteeism refers to missing at least 18 days of school. By April, it applied to 37% of New York City public school students. That's more than 300,000 kids. The surge of the Delta and Omicron variants and safety concerns were major factors.
If we're not asking the right questions right now, what do you think the impact will be down the line?
I'm worried that in a couple of years, we're not even talking 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a huge increase in the number of kids who have dropped out from high school. You could have lots of kids who aren't reading by the end of 3rd grade.
My friends and I, we're working on the suspension.
At ATEC High School, the attendance rate now hovers around 87%. Jaden couldn't wait to return in person, he says, thanks to a teacher who stuck by him.
Coming back in the building felt amazing. Like, all my grades went up, my attendance was higher.
Because experts say before you can teach a child, you have to reach them by any means possible.
This is not just pandemic work now. We've learned this has to be infused into our culture.
Going beyond the classroom to meet students' most pressing needs. In Greenpoint, Brooklyn, Andrea Klein-Thomas, CBS 2 News.
The Department of Education has partnered with community groups to help with attendance efforts.
And there's some common sense being raised, but I'm not going to play the alarm for you. But there is common sense being raised here. So what can you do as a parent to make sure your child goes to school? You need to make sure, like I've always said, you need to make sure your child's out of the bed. That's number one. Number two, you need to make sure I recommend, number two, you put the Life 360 on their phone and on your phone. It'll help track your child, making sure they're at school every day. That's what I recommend. So when August comes around, I recommend y'all I encourage y'all to step up to the plate by the 2023-2024 school year. Attendance matters. And it always will matter, no matter what other people say. moving forward here.
The reason why so many children are skipping.
Moving on here to another country in New Zealand. Is it New Zealand? Yeah, it's New Zealand. New Zealand, they have serious truancy problems, according to the new government data they found. So let's take a look at this.
Reason why so many children are skipping school has been revealed in a new report from the Education Review Office this morning. If you thought it was because of COVID, think again. As you can see from this graph, attendance started falling dramatically before the pandemic, so from 2015, and then you can see that big dip there. That was, of course, when there were lockdowns. But in 2021, when students returned to the classroom, still only 60% were attending regularly. Now, there was Omicron around that time, but that graph is expected to fall again. Some of the reasons both students and parents have given for not attending school may surprise you. For more on this, we're joined by Ruth Shindoa from the Education Review Office. Ruth, thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Morning.
58% not regularly attending school. That is quite a shocking statistic. But it appears that there are a lot of students out there who don't think that it's important for their future.
Yeah, that's right. We were really surprised by just how many students don't see it as important for their future. So a quarter of students just don't see what they're doing at school as important for their future. And a third of learners don't think going to school every day is that important.
So this is not actually necessarily because of COVID, because that's what we have, I guess, probably assumed, that people were off sick and so they just weren't willing to go back to school. But this appears that attitudes towards education have changed.
Yeah, so what we found is that even before COVID, only 3 out of 5 kids were in school regularly. And what really surprised us is that 4 out of 10 parents said they'd be happy for their kids to miss maybe a week or more a term. But that adds up to missing a whole year of school by the time you're 16.
But a week of term, say, if a child is off sick, isn't that reasonable?
So what we're concerned is how things add up. So of course there's sickness that can't be helped, but we also found that a third of parents are happy for their kids to miss a week or more for holidays, 4 out of 10 for sporting events, 1 in 10 parents said they'd be happy for their kids to miss it for their birthday. It's how those things add up, which means a lot of missed school, and we know that that means doing less well at school.
Yeah, let's look at some of the statistics. We've got it in a graphic here now. 22% of students do not think school is important for their future. 67% of parents would keep their children home for other events, family, cultural or a special event, maybe taking them on holiday. 46% of parents would keep their children home for mental health. We've just heard from a viewer on that. 46%. And 38% of parents would keep their children home to avoid bullying. Ruth, does it concern you that so many parents are actually willing to keep their children home for those reasons, or are they genuine reasons?
What worries us is that parents aren't seeing how things add up. So a lot of parents said education is really important. The one-off for your sports event is fine, but it's then if you combine it with the holiday, combine it with the birthday, combine it with the other special events, you can end up missing a lot of school. And we know that even missing a few days of school is linked to kids not doing as well at school.
So the recommendation in the report says in order to turn these truancy rates around, schools need to be great places to be. What do you mean by that, and why is that a school's responsibility? How can they do that?
So what we're saying is actually it's everyone's responsibility. We're recommending 4 things. 1, we all need to prioritise school more. The second is we really need to help parents understand how that missed school adds up. And the third, as you said, is that schools need to be a great place to be. And lastly, we need to move the barriers to going to school. And we saw schools that are great places to be really motivating learners. So learners said they're most motivated to go to school by hanging with their friends, but also having activities they enjoy or having a teacher they've got a good relationship with.
We've had an email in this morning from Jeannie. She's a secondary school teacher, and she says that it's hard because they're expected to entertain kids like they get entertainment at home. They're expected to make every lesson fun, and they're competing with online gaming and TikTok and the likes. Jeannie says, let's be honest, if we do make every single lesson fun, we're not preparing them for real life. Real life is not always fun. Doesn't Jeannie have a point that it's not about fun all of the time, that they're there for academic learning too?
Absolutely. We think academic learning is really key. And what we're saying in this report is that schools can't do it alone. It's about the expectations we set for kids. Interestingly, Pacifica kids were most of all groups motivated to go to school to make their families proud. And again, a lot of learners are motivated by a close relationship with a teacher or a teacher who understands them and likes them. So yeah, it's definitely not all about fun.
Do we know?
We are worried though that a third of learners wake up in the morning and they say they're too tired to go to school. So we've got to fix that too.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't seem like a good excuse at all. A third of learners, that is a lot. How many kids do we know are just flat out not going to school at all? That should be.
So this report didn't look at the kids who aren't there, because we didn't talk to them. We looked at kids who are in school. But it's about this big shift where kids who used to go all the time are now only going some of the time. And how do we get that back on track? How do we get kids going back to school all the time?
So there are, if we look at ways to, I guess, turn attitudes from parents around and to stop them taking students out of school for holidays. There are actually penalties, right? $30 to $300 for keeping your child out of school for unjustified reason. On a second offence, up to $3,000. Now, in England and Wales, they do actually prosecute parents or send them fines quite often. The latest I found was about 90,000 parents fined in a year. They have 87% regular attendance compared to our 58%. Should penalties be perhaps more rigorously policed?
So what we found is, looking at learners, that definitely some learners go to school because they have to, but much stronger motivators for more learners is going to school because they like it, they like the activities, but also they've got this relationship with teachers. And particularly if they can see that school's linked to their future, they're much more likely to go to school. And the schools we looked at up and down the country who are doing great things are doing great things there, and it seems to be having a real impact in getting kids back to school.
Okay, so you're saying that schools really need to look at making it a better place to be?
We're saying it's all of us. Schools definitely can't do this alone. What we found is that we're just not prioritising school enough up and down the country across all different backgrounds and different types of school. And interestingly, as I said, parents think primary school's not that important, but we know that it's really important for the foundations of learning. So we've got to just change some of those expectations about going to school.
Now, if we can't pin this on COVID because the decline began in 2015, what happened in 2015 that it would drop off?
We honestly don't know because this is just looking at now, but what we do see right now is parents are valuing education, but they're just not making the link between education's important and going to school every day is important.
Head of Education Review Officers, Education Evaluation Centre, Ruth Shinoda. Thank you very much for being with us this morning.
There are points being made. I mean, COVID wasn't to blame. Truancy was on the rise, up. Because of everything else. Now, now after COVID, truancy went down. And it went back up. It's like a pattern. So what else can we do? School's very important, so you need to keep track of your child's attendance. Online. We have Skyward. If you have the Skyward app, you can track your child's attendance, making sure he goes to school a lot. And like I said before, you can use Life 360 to make sure your child goes to school every day. They want to lie and say they've been at school? Well, check their phone. Their phone has the Life 360 app, and it'll show them that they went to school or went somewhere else. If they lie, here's what you do. I mean, we can't just be throwing parents in jail. We won't be harsh enough. There are other ways to discipline kids. Take away the driver's license. Take away the cell phone. There are other ways to discipline kids. So that we get them back on track when it comes to your child's education. Okay. Up next here, a judge. A judge who explains truant conduct and what it means. Stay with us. In 2003, before I get to this, here's something you should know. In 2003, you had to, if your child was being truant, they were ordered to wear ankle bracelets. But that was all in the history books. Take a look at this.
Since 2003, not going to school, truancy, has been a crime in Texas, but today that all changed. A new state law no longer treats students who skip school as criminals, and Fox 4's Sean Rabb is in our Dallas newsroom with details on the change. Sean.
You know, Steve, many people argued that treating kids who played hooky a lot had excessive absences. They argued, well, that if they treated them like criminals, that's where the pipeline to prison began. Before today, a guilty plea could lead to time in the juvenile justice system. But with the Justice Department looking at how kids who skipped school were being treated in Dallas County, state lawmakers made sweeping changes to truancy laws. Students being hauled in handcuffs and forced to wear ankle monitors because of skipping school, now in the history books.
We decriminalize it. It's no longer a crime.
Effective today, new truancy laws make it a civil, not criminal violation for a child to have up to 10 unexcused absences in a 6-month period.
We reduce the cost from $500 to $50 as it relates to court costs. We allow expunction of records. We tell the districts to kind of look at different alternatives.
Alternatives to quickly filing truancy cases on students. School districts now challenged to try and get to the root cause of the problem with each pupil.
Through conferences, through communication with the families, that's when you begin to learn what may be holding the student back, what challenges may be ahead.
While lawmakers decriminalize truancy for the students, parents will still be held criminally liable for their child not being in school.
But you have to change your focus from more punitive to more helping, more caring, more empathy, more outreach.
Once you have a situation where a kid is labeled a criminal, guess what ends up happening? They become a criminal. We should be able to find different ways in order to keep these kids in school without having to make them criminals.
Now, 4 categories of students cannot be filed on period if their absences are connected to their situation. That's pregnant students, homeless students, students in foster care, and students who are the primary wage earners for their families.
Sean, I'm curious, Andre Riley there, does he acknowledge this is going to maybe put a little more pressure on teachers and the school districts to kind of be a little more involved in these kids' lives?
They absolutely have to be more involved with the students' lives. It's going to require teachers and others in the district who will focus on truancy to kind of begin to really log those absences, approach a kid, and then the main thing that Andre talked about is the district's going to really become engaging with the parents. Right. Emails, phone calls, letters, saying, hey, let's have a conference about your child. Let's figure out what's going on at home, how we can help.
Okay. Sean Rabb in the Dallas Newsroom. Thanks.
All right.
So now, earlier we were talking about the 90% rule. But back in 2015, the decriminalizing was gone away. But there's a thing called truant conduct. It's defined as a child engaging in more absences in a 6-month period. So here's more from Judge John E. Payton from back in 2015.
Good afternoon. My name is John Payton, and I am a Justice of the Peace here in Precinct 3, Place 2. If you are in the Allen Independent School District, then this video was made so that you can have better understanding of what the new laws are here in the state of Texas in regards to parent contributing and now the new law called truant conduct. Today we are going to talk about the elimination of failure to attend school as a Class C misdemeanor charge for students not attending school, and the replacement with Section 65, Title 3 of the Family Code, which is now being called truant conduct. It's been an interesting response that I've received from students when they tell me that they have received their information via text from their friends or on social media in regards to what's gone on with truancy. I've had answers that have been as crazy as there is no more requirement for students to attend school here in Texas, to now you can put us in jail for 2 or 3 years, to all of our cases have to be expunged and we can never be filed on for truancy again, but yet we're required to go to school and the school has to do more. So today my plan is to try and help shed some light on what the new law actually says and give you my interpretation of Section 65, Title 3 of the Family Code. This is all going to be under House Bill 2398. The idea was to eliminate a criminal charge against the child, never to get away from the fact that a child is still required to be in school in the state of Texas. Sadly, and most interestingly, a lot of that is driven by funding. If the federal level doesn't have a requirement for a state to require their children to go to school, then the federal U.S. Department of Education won't fund the state of Texas's Department of Education. And so that requirement is still going to be in place so that the state can receive funding from the federal government to help fund education in the state of Texas. With that being said, failure to attend school charge did go away. In fact, as of September 1st, 2015, all documents, all case files, everything that ever existed in regards to a failure to attend school case has been and is being expunged from the child's record. Now, moving forward from September 1st of 2015, all the new charges will be called truant conduct. Truant conduct is defined as a child engaging in truant conduct is required to attend school under Section 25.085 of the Education Code and fails to attend school on 10 or more days or parts of days within a 6-month period in the same school year. Truant conduct may be prosecuted only as a civil case in truancy court. Now, interestingly enough, this is still a charge. The allegation is truant conduct. The charge is truant conduct. You will not be entering a plea of guilty, not guilty, or no contest. You will now, if the prosecutor, the state prosecutor that prosecutes criminal cases, finds that the evidence that they have been given by the school district is sufficient, shall file a petition creating the allegations against you called truant conduct. When that petition is filed, that's when the entire process of the adjudication hearing begins. Prior to the adjudication hearing, the school district must enter into truancy prevention measures. Now, the law doesn't say that they have to enter truancy prevention measures if you're going to be uncooperative or if you're not going to show up for your meetings or your hearings. They have to make a good faith effort to make sure that they have tried to implement truancy prevention measures to prevent you from having to come to truancy court, which, by the way, is something that I have preached for 25 years of being on the bench. That's why we provide videos like this, educational videos, to hopefully educate and inform so that you'll make good decisions and not find yourself going into a courtroom. However, under the truancy prevention measures, these are measures that are now required on student cases. As a truancy prevention measure, under subsection A, a school district shall take one or more of the following actions. The majority of the school districts that I have spoken to in Collin County, and really a part of our Collin County truancy uniform policy, most school districts are electing to choose option 1. Number 1, impose a behavior improvement plan on the student that must be signed by an employee of the school that the school district has made a good faith effort to have signed by the student and the student's parent or guardian. That includes a specific description of the behavior that is required or prohibited for the student, the period for which the plan will be effective, not to exceed 45 school days after the date the contract becomes effective. And again, almost all of the school districts that I'm aware of and our Collin County Uniform Truancy Policy Committee has decided that they wish to use and elect to use the first option. So be prepared to have to come into a meeting and sign a BIP, or what I've explained to students and parents, what used to formerly be called an attendance improvement contract, which fortunately all of you who are students in Collin County have probably come across, because most of the school districts here in Collin County have used attendance contracts to help you improve your attendance and hopefully not lose credit in your classes. Don't confuse the 90% rule, where you're required to be in school 90% of the time, with truant conduct. They are not one and the same. If you make your unexcused absences or excused absences up, that is with the 90% rule granting you credit back for your classes. However, if you make up your unexcused absences or parts of days, it doesn't mean that you still haven't violated the law and can be filed on for truant conduct. It just means that you've received your credit back, especially for secondary students. So the two are mutually exclusive, although they do have a tendency to bleed over to one another. Furthermore, the age has changed. A lot of students have come in and said, well, we can drop out of school now at 17. I don't have to go to school anymore, and I'm not getting my GED. I've actually had students tell me that here in court. However, that is not the case. You are now required to go to school till your 19th birthday. If you are filed on and you are under court order during the duration of your 19th birthday, the court order doesn't expire because you've turned 19. You will be required under the remedial order to continue to attend school through your 19th birthday. And if you've not turned 19 before the school year starts, you will be required to attend school and begin the school year. And so those rules have changed and bumped up the age of requirement to attend school one additional year. Furthermore, now, once a case is referred to the truancy court, it is sent over to the prosecutor. The prosecutor in Collin County will review it within 7 days. If there is a holiday, or if there are other days where there are ice days or weather days, that may be extended by 2 to 3 days. However, under the Collin County Uniform Truancy Policy that we've already discussed in Collin County, every 7 days a county or city prosecutor will review the petition or the referral made by the school district to the court. Once it's referred and looked at by the state will send it back to the court, approving it or not approving it. If the state says the petition doesn't have the required elements, then the state will dismiss it and nothing will go forward. The school district will continue its process. However, if the state says, yes, there's enough elements here to prove the petition to be filed, then they file the petition. You will receive either a certified mail return receipt requested letter summoning you to court, or you will be served by a deputy with a paper at your home place of employment. Or really, it doesn't say that you can't be served at school, if that's where they can find you and finally get you served. I can tell you that from a county standpoint, sending out certified mail return receipt requested is not profitable, and I don't mean profitable for making money, but it takes away from the taxpayers' money. And so therefore we're going to more than likely have all of ours served by a deputy. So the deputy will go to your home, knock on your door, serve both you, the student now, and the parent, and any other person that may be contributing to your lack of school attendance. Under the new truant conduct law, they have added a section that if there is a determination that somebody else is contributing to your truant conduct, that person can now be brought into the court and placed under court order as well, and be served. Let me give you an example, because this is the most common. Students turn 17. For whatever reason, police departments have told them that they can move out of their home, that they're grown, they're adults now. That is not the case. Both under Acton, which is a Supreme Court case from 1995, and under state law, a student doesn't become an adult or the age of majority until they turn 18 years of age. So if you leave your home at 17, a parent has a duty under section 151.001 of the Family Code to go out and retrieve you and bring you home. Feel free to review that online at www.tx.gov and look up state statutes, and you can find that statute there. Because I know students like to go and find their own proof. They're great researchers. So go out, find that so you understand what the law says. So at 17, you move out of your home and move in with a boyfriend or a girlfriend and their family. If you do not have permission from your parents to do that, then you are violating the law. That person, if you have truant conduct, can then be brought into court and also be placed under a court order. So do understand that you are now implicating other people in this process if you have truant conduct, and they can be placed under court order as well. That is one of the big changes to the law. So, we've gotten you served, the referral's been made, you show up to court. Once you show up to court, there will be a waiver of rights that will be read to you. You will be explained your charge in great detail. You will be explained your appeal rights in great detail. And then you will be asked if you wish to answer to the petition, true or not true. If you answer to the petition true, then we will go forward and issue a remedial court order. For the most part, Article 45054, which was the old law for failure to attend school, and all the requirements that come with it, are folded into Title III, Section 65 of the Family Code. The court can still order community service. The court can order you are required to attend school. The court can order you are required to attend tutorials. The court can order that your driver's license be suspended. The court can order counseling. The court can order classes. The court can order treatment, whether it be inpatient, outpatient drug treatment. So all of those things have not changed, and the remedial order can still be put into place as the old order did. Then there becomes the question, well, I don't want to do anything you tell me to do. And that, of course, is clearly up to the student. At that point, we can hold an enforcement hearing, we can hold a modification hearing, which if you've been in court with me before, you know those are called status hearings. And then at those hearings, if we determine that your behavior is contemptuous, we can hold you in contempt and fine you. At that point in time, also modify your court order for other conditions to help promote good attendance. If you continue to violate your remedial order, at another hearing you can be held in contempt of court again. If you get held in contempt of court a second time or a third time, you will be referred to the Juvenile Probation Department, where the juvenile probation officer can do one of several things. One, institute new conditions and then pass you back to the court. Two, refer you to the district court in Collin County, where you will then go in front of the juvenile judge. At that point in time, there will be an attorney appointed for you. Also at that point in time, the district judge will notify you that in fact you could be looking at a possibility of incarceration. And that means jail. At the level of the district juvenile court judge, it isn't just a weekend possibility. The juvenile district court judge at the hearing, in fact, must tell you what it is that they can or cannot do if you do not act accordingly and follow your court order. If you get referred to the district juvenile court, these are the things that can happen. The juvenile court finds that the child engaged in conduct that constitutes contempt of the order issued by the truancy court or direct contempt of court. The juvenile court shall enter an order requiring the child to comply with the truancy's court order. Number 2, forward a copy of the order to the truancy court within 5 days and admonish the child orally and in writing of the consequences of subsequent referrals to the juvenile court, including a possible charge of delinquent conduct for contempt of the truancy court's order or direct contempt of court, and a detention hearing. A detention hearing means that you could be looking at going to the juvenile jail. If you end up in the juvenile jail, the district court judge will inform you that that could end up in a sentence for up to 1 year. And so really, the advice I would give you as a student would be to A, not have poor attendance, make good decisions, reach out to your crisis counselor, to your house principal, your sub-school principal, your assistant principal, reach out to your counselor at your school if you are having difficulties that is preventing you from being able to go to school, so that they can assist you in trying to get past those things and get into a better rhythm with your attendance. Furthermore, The court will explain to you that you have a right to a jury trial. That's part of your waiver of rights. And then the court will also explain to you your right to not have to say anything in your case that could possibly put you in a bad spot, and allow you to address all the witnesses that are saying that you have done these acts of truant conduct. So those are some of the things that the new law has done. However, what you have found is that the new law did not remove the requirement to attend school. It did not take away the fact that you can be placed under a court's order and be required to do all of the things that would help you be a better student and attend school on a regular basis. I recommend that if you have any questions, again, go to the website for the state of Texas at www.tx.gov, type in Texas statutes, look up section 65 of the Family Code under Title III. You want to start on page 30 of the bill, because that's where the bill runs, and that's where it all begins for you. If the court finds that you are not being represented properly, the court will hire for you a guardian ad litem and charge that off to your parents. Well, where that person will advise your parents how to parent you. If the court feels that you're not being represented properly, the court can also hire you an attorney and charge that off to your family as well. The idea that you don't have to do community service anymore is not true. The court can now order that you and your parent do community service as well, up to 50 hours. So these are the things that have changed, and these are now the requirements under the new law called truant conduct. So I do recommend that if you get to 3 unexcused absences in a 4-week period of time, and you have to sit down and go over the BIP with your school, please adhere to those recommendations so that you don't hit 10 unexcused absences or parts of days in a 6-month period of time. If you have any questions, please get with your...
That's enough of that. I guess y'all understand what the big deal was. So, the law has changed since 2015, since 2003 here of truant conduct. We'll be right back. It's time for Viral Bake, but this time with a preview of Friday's Give Me a Break. Take a look.
No jaywalking. What's that?
Alright, that's on Friday's Give Me a Break, the jaywalking. Why is it illegal? And what you can do to avoid jaywalking by crossing the intersection. That's Give Me a Break for Wednesday going to Thursday. We'll see you for Throwback Thursday. If not, and I'll see you again for Give Me a Break Friday. For everyone here at YouTube, have a good night.